The winter is a time that beckons us to slow down and draws us in. It's a time to read, a time to rest, a time to tend to the parts of our home that may have been neglected over the summer months, a time to cozy up with soft blankets and warm beverages and flickering candles, a time to spend with those we love most in the world, a time to open up our home to others in hospitality, to provide a haven from the cold, dreary days. It's a time to embrace Hygge, a Danish concept that has no singular word translation in the English language. It's a time to create a warm, inviting atmosphere, to embrace the seasonal changes, to disconnect from the outside world, to foster meaningful connections with others, and to lean in to enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Come along with me as I learn to cultivate Hygge on our little homestead this winter. Hello my friends, it's Lauren. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. For those of you who are new around here, my family and I live on 2.5 acres in an old farmhouse in the middle of the city. So we are surrounded by a typical neighborhood but have a little bit of land, and we have been learning how to homestead and pursue a slower way of life over the last 2.5 years. Today I'm going to take you along with me as I cultivate a cozy environment in my home for my family. This is something that I have been working towards. I think when I first became a mom, there are a lot of messages that are in our culture that made me feel like even though I really wanted to be home with my babies, that I was wasting my potential or that it wasn't enough. But I can tell you that after being home with my children and getting to be there for so much of their first years of life, there is so much purpose and so much meaning in being home. I don't think it's the right fit for every family or an option for every family, and I don't take that lightly. But if you are a young mom who is maybe struggling with feeling some of those feelings like I described, I want to encourage you that there is purpose and there is meaning in taking time to cultivate a place that feels like home for your family and for guests who enter it. So this video was actually supposed to go live almost 2 weeks ago, but we were traveling and I wasn't able to get it done in time, and then we got home and my entire family got really sick. We've been pretty sick for a week, and I usually do voiceovers at night when my kids are sleeping, and I was not able to do that because I was coughing so much and we had stomach issues going through our house. It was just a really challenging week, and we are ready to get back into the rhythm, just have a little bit of normalcy. So right now I'm just tidying up our home, and I have been trying to embrace having a tidy but not perfect home in this season. I am somebody who really likes things to be organized and cleaned, but when you're trying to care for young children and have land to manage and running a business or just making a lot of meals from home, it's never going to be perfect. And that's okay, but I do think that it shouldn't be an excuse for not making an effort and trying to make my home feel like a comfortable, clean place for my family. I wanted to share a couple of tips that have helped me in keeping our home a little bit more tidy and picked up. I would say that it is usually picked up by the end of the day, but not necessarily deep cleaned, but I try to do my best in this season. So one thing that I do is I work room by room. So I'll try to tidy up one whole room before moving on to the next, because otherwise I feel like I get a lot of little things done but never accomplish an entire section of my house. And so I started with my bedroom, working on the bathroom. The bathroom hadn't been cleaned for a while, so I am cleaning that as well. And another thing that has worked really well is to keep things as minimal as possible. I've learned that I am pretty overwhelmed easily by clutter, and so when I'm able to keep our home fairly minimal, it is a lot easier to pick up, a lot easier to clean, and it's a lot less overwhelming for me and my children. So I try to go through and declutter frequently. A lot of times, if I'm honest, a lot of the things end up in our closet, and I will get to it at a later date. But in our main rooms, I do try to keep things fairly minimal without a lot of extra decor because it makes it easier to tidy and clean up when I have time. Another thing that has been helpful is to have lots of little baskets around my house. So our playroom is our living room. We don't have a separate room for it. And so I like to have little baskets for my kids to keep their books and their toys in, and that way they're able to take responsibility for helping to take care of their belongings, and it's a good way to teach them to clean up. I use baskets for things like fresh produce for our eggs and going through and finding the ones that are clean because we have a flock of chickens. And I also use baskets for papers, pretty much everything. You'll find lots of baskets in my house, but it makes it a lot easier to tidy and clean up. Since we started homesteading, I am cooking at home a lot more frequently. I've been trying to learn how to cook from scratch, and there are many days where we eat 3 meals a day at home, and I usually cook between 5 to 6 dinners at home each week. So one thing that I've found that makes this a lot easier is to lay out plates and to set the table earlier in the day. So I'll try to do this a little bit before lunch and then also before dinner. It doesn't happen every day, but I find that when I take the time to do this, it's one less thing to think about when I'm preparing the meal later in the day, and my family can just come and the table is ready and set for a meal together. I've also been trying to teach my kids to help set the table. So again, it doesn't happen every single day, but when they are around and available, especially my oldest has been helping take ownership in that. I have an incredibly supportive and involved husband, and he usually does the dishes at the end of the day. But recently I've been trying to put some of them away if I have a moment, especially if I'm cooking and waiting on something, because really it only takes me about 5 minutes to unload the dishwasher. So I find that I'm able to keep my home a little bit more tidy if I just do a task that's going to take me 5 minutes while I'm waiting on something else. But I am incredibly grateful that he takes on the dishes after dinner. I think that household chores and responsibilities will look different for each family, and that's okay. For my family, we found what works for us, and we communicate regularly about that. And so I encourage you, if you are married, to talk to your spouse or to involve your children as you can, and to share that load with one another in order to make your house feel like a home. Another way that I have been working to cultivate connection with my family at home this winter is through baking. I actually prefer cooking over baking because I don't love to follow recipes, and with baking you really kind of need to follow recipes, especially when you're a beginner. And I feel like baking is incredibly messy and tends to explode in my kitchen all over the floors and the counters, but I have been embracing it because it's something that I genuinely do enjoy doing with my kids, and they love getting to help in the kitchen in this way. A couple of things that have helped when baking with kids are to expect a mess. I find that when I'm already expecting it, it isn't something that feels stressful to me because I was already counting on it getting messy. Another thing is I recommend starting with baking just once a week, especially if you don't bake regularly. I will try to bake with my kids once a week, sometimes more, but I find that just making it part of our rhythm a little bit during the week is something that we genuinely look forward to. And another suggestion is to give them tools to help. Even if it's not necessarily helping, it helps them to feel involved and included.
So I wanted to pause for a minute and talk about cultivating an environment of peace within your home. This is something that I have been working on. I still have a ways to go, and there are a lot of times when my home is not very peaceful. I have a almost 4-year-old and a 1-year-old, and just with having young children, there's lots of noise, there's lots of things out, but I want to share a couple of things that have helped. I really believe as parents, we set the tone for our home, and I think that having a peaceful presence or a peaceful attitude in the home can really help cultivate that environment. And so I think as parents, we need to be taking care of ourselves. It's hard when you have young kids, but I do think prioritizing your own spiritual, mental, emotional health is really important, because if we are anxious and angry and stressed, then that's going to be setting the tone for our entire home. So when there's times when I'm beginning to feel more of those emotions, my husband will sit down and talk, and we'll try to come up with a plan to help eliminate some of that stress. Some of the things that we have done to promote more peace within our home is to have a weekly Sabbath as a family. And so I do a lot of work on the weekends or in the evenings because my husband works full time, and I do have a little bit of help during the week, but most of the time I'm doing it after the kids go to bed or on the weekends. And before, I was trying to just fit it in all the time into little pockets of the day, and then I would spend the entire weekend working and wasn't spending time with my family. And so to the extent that, if I was spending time, I was always thinking about what I needed to do. So we implemented the rhythm of having a weekly Sabbath where my husband and I take turns planning it so that the mental load is not falling all on one person. And we usually plan a special meal. Sometimes it's going out somewhere, a lot of times it's at home. And then we'll plan an activity. A lot of times it's free, sometimes it costs a little bit. We'll try to do something special and out of the norm and just really prioritize family time together. We spend time praying and doing a devotional together. And we're just trying to really establish this rhythm that we value our family, we value time together. And this is the time to rest and to set down work and to just really be grateful for what the Lord has given us and to enjoy time together. And so that has really helped promote peace within our home because it's a rhythm that we look forward to each week. And I also know that this is when I'm going to set my work aside and be focused 100% on my family. So I think establishing rhythms and routines is one way to really help promote peace within your home. My friend Cayenne, I'll put the link to her channel below. She is so good at establishing routines with young children. I really admire and have learned so much from her. And her channel, she really dives deep into this topic. It's really her primary focus. And so that's something that we're working on figuring out. I think it's different for every family, but it's something that we're trying to work on. Another way that we promote peace within our home is by having less items. And this is hard because especially if you have a homestead, there's lots of items that you need for your animals or caring for your yard. And things just accumulate. And so I've been trying to be more selective about the items that we bring into our home and to do a better job of trying to go through and organize them and donate or resell things that we're no longer using. Another thing that we have done to promote peace within our home is to be prepared. And so we get out of rhythm sometimes, but when my husband and I take the time to reset for the next day by setting out the kids' clothes, having our bag ready to go if we have to be somewhere, that sets us off to such a better start on the day. And also when we meal also when we meal plan and are prepared for the week ahead, that makes it such a smoother week than just jumping into the week and having no idea what we're going to do. And I think above all else is having a relationship with the Lord and taking time to talk with Him, to talk to Him about our fears, our worries, our concerns. This is something that I have gotten out of the rhythm of, and so I think really trying to prioritize being with a community of people who will encourage you in your faith, and then also having those conversations with your spouse and trying to find time, whether it's in the morning or the evening, to set aside to meditate and pray and speak to the Lord. I think that really does ultimately, I found that true peace is from Jesus and not from having a perfectly put together home. So I wanted to talk about Hygge in terms of food. In the book Holy Hygge, the author talks about how in Danish culture, their food is this comforting, sorry, I feel like this is like super wobbly. There we go. So she talks about how they have a lot of comfort foods that are very simple. I haven't studied this a lot, so it's something I need to learn more about. But she also talked about how they eat food that is in season. And I think that's something that my family has been trying to do, just having a garden, having a homestead. We are more likely to eat food in season because that's what we have readily available to us. So over the summer, we had lots of things like cucumbers and some tomatoes. My tomatoes didn't do great, but lots of fresh herbs. And then over the winter, I'm using lots of frozen things and making soups. I'll use things like acorn squash or butternut squash, things that are in season. And I'm found that as a mom with young children, I am a lot more likely to cook at home if I cook simple meals, or if I make one really big meal early on in the week. I usually pick it on a day when my husband works from home so that it's not as overwhelming. And then I will make other meals from that thing for the rest of the week. So for example, I made a ham earlier in the week, and I used that to make 3 or 4 other meals throughout the week. I also shared it with my mom, and she helped us create some meals as well, and also made some for her and other people in my family. And so I think kind of sharing that load, and then also creating a meal that will reduce, maybe it's one day of really hard work, but it'll reduce the amount of work that you have to do throughout the week. Because I can tell you that cooking while you're trying to take care of a toddler and baby can feel really overwhelming. But if you take the time to maybe create something that is more work on a day when you have help, and then cook easier, simple meals throughout the week, then it's going to make it really enjoyable. You're going to save a lot of money from eating at home, but also it won't be this huge stressor for you. At least that's what I found in my experience.
So here I am starting to prepare a butternut squash soup for dinner, and I also ended up making some Brussels sprouts. So I have started cooking foods that are in season. A lot of things will just naturally be in season from my garden, and so I'll cook what's fresh in the garden. But I did not grow squash this year, and so I purchased it from our local grocery store. And it's more affordable when you purchase things that are in season, and the food tastes much better because it's a lot fresher. I really noticed this with strawberries over the summer. I don't even remember how many jars of jam, but I got the strawberries, I think, for less than $2 at our local Aldi because they were in season and they tasted so good. Probably the best strawberries I've ever had. I really love making soup because it's perfect for cold, wintry days, and you can eat off of it for several days. I like to cook, but it takes a lot of time. It makes a big mess, so I do try to consolidate or cook things that can be eaten for leftovers. We eat a lot of leftovers in my family, so I'll always make enough where we'll have enough for lunch the next day. So something that I read in the book Holy Hygge that I've been reading through was that in Danish culture, they will use candles quite frequently, even if it's not for a special occasion or a romantic dinner. And so I decided it was a simple, I think it was a Monday night when I filmed this, to light the candles, turn the lights down low, and my kids thought it was so fun and so fancy. Another way that you can create a cozy environment in your home is to have some cozy slippers or a cozy blanket, light some candles, turn the lights low. These are simple, tangible ways to really cultivate a peaceful atmosphere in your home. My shoes and this blanket are from the brand Quince, and I wanted to tell you all a little bit more about them today. So, Quince believes in quality products that can elevate your life. They are a sustainable brand that also offers sustainable products at an affordable price. They value quality, sustainability, and affordability, and they're able to keep their prices low by using a factory direct model that cuts out the supply chain and middlemen, and this helps reduce costs in the long run. Quince values accountability and transparency. They're committed with only partnering with factories who meet or exceed global guidelines for workplace safety and equitable wages, according to their website. They are a company that values transparency. They share about the products that they use, the materials, where they were made, and why they are priced the way that they are. On their website, they break down how they're able to have their prices. They talk about the materials, the crafting cost, the packaging, everything involved in the process. I personally have a couple of items from Quince. I also have a shirt from there, and I sew and know what to look for with high quality fabric and the way that the garment was constructed, and all of the items that I have from Quince are very well made. I can tell that they will hold up over time, and the materials are very high quality. This wool blanket is extremely cozy. I loved curling up with it with my book, and I have been wearing the slippers pretty much every day since I got them. In the future, I would love to purchase some bedding from Quince because they have some really beautiful sustainable bedding that is a lot more affordable than a lot of other sustainable companies. I've shared a lot on here about ways that I have been able to cultivate hygge in my home with the physical atmosphere. And I think, as I mentioned briefly before, it goes much deeper than that. In the book Holy Hygge, I really like how she takes it a step further and talks about how our peace and our hope is not found in our environment, but it is found in Christ, our Creator. I'll read an excerpt from her book. It's found on page 24. The idea of hygge is compelling in our current culture of excess and isolation because it promises community, contentment, and rest. Hygge can cultivate all of those, but only when placed at the foot of the cross. The world is ripe for the comfort of real sanctuary living. The practices of hygge, in close cooperation with our trust in Jesus, can form a holistic approach to creating the kind of home and rich life that humanity has longed for since the perfection of the garden. A few pages before, she says, while in the center of a life of sameness, hygge taught me how to look for miracles in the mundane. When plagued with perfection of Pinterest, hygge's simple aesthetic foundations helped me create a home atmosphere that reflected the beauty and comfort of Christ. Above all, when I was desperate to leave a legacy of faith, hygge showed me how to escape the pressure of a social media saturated world and establish the kind of emotional, physical, and spiritual habits that could influence my friends, family, and neighbors for generations to come. It has helped me live a life of purpose on this side of the first garden while I wait for my future home in the second. Now, friends, I am not an expert with hygge. I am not even finished with the book. I still have a lot to learn, but this is the type of environment that I want to cultivate in my home. I want my family and my friends to feel known and safe and cared for, but I want it to go beyond that, not a picture perfect environment, but a place where people can feel the deep love and presence of Christ.